My name is Tanya Curry, and this is this week's Acumen Media Report. It's entitled, Sonar Tings, the State of Our Nation. Did you watch it? I bet you only watched until wide-eyed Julius left. Am I right? Well, I watched it so you didn't have to, and the Sonar 2023 was not worth the late night. It wasn't even worth the dodgy popcorn I burnt for the occasion. I have a great deal to say, so join me and scratch the surface of the media this week with Acumen. I had a dream for Sonar 23. I wanted everyone to wear their jeans and t-shirts. I didn't want a red carpet. I didn't want pomp and ceremony. I didn't want to know who created the dress someone was wearing. And I didn't want a 21-gun salute. I wanted a Zoom meeting. That would have been a statement and would have stopped the EFF storming the president during the proceedings. Mute buttons are the bomb. Many jested on social that we should have had Marfair SA's Guy Fawkes to take the rubbish down. But instead we watched a ceremony that cost hundreds of thousands of rands. A large, gluttonous gathering of garments waddling its way up the red carpet, and then colonialism at its finest. Guys, why do we have Scottish bagpipes? Why are the guards dressed in bright British red? Why is there a 21-gun salute, and why does the president need galloping horses and flying jets? I know we've done this before, but this time to me it felt very strange. One of the TV stations had the head of the SANDF in studio and asked much the same question, and his answer was that it was the highest honor that can be bestowed on a president. When asked, but why, he said, well, it's written in the manual. I don't make these things up. These are Sonar things.
So why is only 6 motorbikes for the deputy president and 28 for the president?
It's on our ceremonial handbook. So it's prescribed like that. The number of security for the deputy president compared to the state president is not the same.
There were moments when I laughed so much. For example, there were always 3 people marching. I think they were waiting for cars. When cars arrived, 2 people, a man and a woman, would open the back doors of the cars. They did this exceptionally well. So well that they even opened doors when no one was inside the car. Yet, they still stood there as if there was an imaginary person that was getting out, and then closed the door. I thought initially it was a mistake, but it happened every single time. There was one howler of a moment when a car stopped a little too far to the back of the guardians of the car doors, and the military woman had to do a sidestep shuffle to get to the back door. The driver, realizing his or her error, drove forward only for the shuffling military lady to do the shuffle to the right this time. After all that, there was no one on her side of the car, and again, she opened the door for our imaginary friend. Sonar ting. Some of the comments from attendees made me laugh too. I'll give you just a few to cheer you up as it's Friday after all. One person said that we needed to be nimble-feeted, and that there was another who said it was no surprise we have cholera. Another told us there was too much water under the drain. This set on the backdrop of a colonial show made quite an extraordinary juxtaposition. All dressed up to get a dressing down. That was Sonar 2023. One thing we knew with certainty was the EFF were going to make a show of themselves. When the crew were all finally in the municipal building, the praise singer had sung his song. The first thing the Speaker of the House said is that we should take a minute for silent prayer or medication.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation.
What a Freudian slip, and so funny that even she got the giggles. A word on Madam Speaker Mapisa Ngakula. She was outstanding, and yet again this woman held court with an iron fist. Can she be our president, even if she is taking Urbanol every now and again? She handled the EFF onslaught like a boss. The president took to the podium, and so it began. Not with the red tie, but this time with ATM leader Vuyo Zungula, who, after refusing to sit down, was removed from the House. cue the EFF with more spurious points of order than pieces of gum in their mouths. For the most part, Ngakula kept her cool, and then she called it off and told them all to sit down. No more points of order would be allowed. Well, I suppose she could have added by the EFF, because that is actually what she meant. It was at this point, completely rehearsed and very obvious, that the EFF started fluttering placards and shouting point of order at the top of their voices as if it were a screaming competition. It was disgraceful and an insult to our nation who are hanging on for a lifeline. Eventually, she called in the white shirts to remove certain members from the EFF, and then a scene of orchestrated horror. The EFF, all of them, stormed the stage where the president was seated. They had one aim in mind, Matamela. Ngakula called for the SAPs to enter immediately and get involved, and the president's bodyguards formed a tight circle around the president. The presidential guard, stealthily dressed for the occasion, swung into action. As the SAPs and the white shirts fought back the EFF put female party members in the front line. Women first, eh? Headline grabbers. Well, so they thought, but Ngakula had thought about that too. She'd called the female SAPs, and these women made their way and grabbed the screaming red-ducked women by the scruff of their necks, and then it really kicked off. Note to the wise, and Ndlozi smiled throughout the whole thing. I have questions, lots of them. Surely storming the president is a treasonous act. I mean, I bet if I did it, I'd probably be in jail or shot on sight. Am I right? If we all knew, because Julius had a presser to tell us that there was going to be such trouble, why didn't we just have a Zoom meeting, guys? All those hundreds and thousands of rands while the nation is starving, living in the dark, without water or with water that we cannot drink. What are we doing here? Sonar, the State of Our Nation address. Earlier this week, the president was quoted as saying that we as a nation need to stop moaning and get involved. So eventually when he did speak, we were all attentive. Even Uncle Gwede had a notepad and a pen. Ramaphosa said three things. 1, he declared our energy crisis a state of disaster. 2, we have a Minister of Electricity. And 3, there will be a massive cabinet reshuffle. That was it. He could have sent us a memo. Let me quickly unpack this so you don't have to read the news. The state of disaster will open up the coffers for more cash for Eskom. The president said that they would have these funds monitored by no other than the Auditor General. And yes, it sounds impressive, but if you'd seen Dorata earlier in the week, then you would know that there is not a chance in dark hell that that money will go to the right cause. Dorata unpacked the depth of corruption and how it is impossible to stop.
The criminality is quite well organized and it is very deeply embedded. So just fixing it is not an easy task, and the resistance to implementing, for example, pretty basic control measures sometimes goes to extraordinary lengths.
The president said we should all go for solar or wind power or so many different forms of power except the powerful Eskom. To be fair, sir, I think we'd already worked that one out. Then the Minister of Electricity. Why? Why do we not have a Minister of Potholes or a Minister of GBV? Are those still coming? I have a sneaky suspicion that this move means Gwede Mantashe will be stripped of his control of Eskom, hence the upcoming reshuffle. Let's hope the president shuffles that deck of marked cards right out of the room. There are so many on my wish list. No one more than Lindiwe Sisulu, who had an interesting week too. That Tottenham Hotspur deal got passed around like a hot soccer ball, and when Madame Medusa was called to account by Parliament, she arrived 4 hours late. So much for luxury watches, hey? 4 hours. The insolence of this woman. When she made it into the room, there was no space for her to sit, and she played rounders with the boardroom table until she told someone to get her a chair. A lady, gallant gentlemen don't exist in Parliament, ran behind her with a chair only for Lindiwe to completely ignore the woman's efforts and sit elsewhere. She then started speaking over the chair, pardon the pun, only to be schooled by Thandi Mahambelahle. who said that Sisulu should be reminded of the rules of Parliament and that her behaviour was nothing less than revolting.
I'm not sure what that means, but my understanding is that executives are not supposed to have programs on the eve of the inauguration. However,
Moving back to Sonar, Sisulu was asked about her relationship with Thandi and said, shame, she's not very well, and when the camera arrives, she turns into a different person. Ooh, I wanted to slap that Medusa head right off her shoulders. Anyway, the short version is many resigned or were fired about the deal, and now it's on ice. There was other news, most of it cheerful, so let's focus on that. Didi Mabuza resigned, whoop. The Grammys, Black Coffee tore down the house, and Zakes Bantwini made a phenomenal impact. We may not have a lot, but we certainly have the tune. And the Real Housewives are back. I'm saving them up for a binge session. Do not judge me. Across the waters, and certainly the biggest story in the world, is the twin quakes that hit Turkey and other countries. Tens of thousands dead, and children being dragged out of the rubble. The horror, the pain, the suffering are beyond our ability to comprehend. Thank you to Gift of the Givers for taking on this crisis. In other news, the Chinese lost a balloon, which made great memes. Ukraine is in tatters, but Zelensky found a way to make a trip to Paris to collect his Legion of Honor from Macron. Insert our role here. I saved the best for last, though. Fawlty Towers is coming back, as John Cleese and his daughter have got together to do a series that will no doubt save the world's sanity. I'm Tonya Curry. My goodness, that was a big scratch on the surface of the media.